Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Vikhar, and today we will be discussing about sonopathology of the shoulder. So, pertaining to specifically, we will not be able to cover everything, but the diagnostic aspect, as we all know, that ultrasound is a very important modality, an important tool or a weapon to have in our clinics, especially in the pain physician's clinic. So, today we will be discussing sonopathology, following up with a little ultrasound dissection of the tendons. In pathology also, we will be mainly concentrating on the rotator cuff disease, and then a few interventions, and that's how we are going to actually go about today. So this is Dr. Vikhar. I'm a consultant pain physician at Alleviate Pain and Spine Center, Bangalore, a former consultant anesthesiologist, mainly into orthopedic anesthesia at Astradhar Hospital, Kolhapur, where I, got interested initially in thinking that pain was equivalent to a regional anesthesia. It's not, and I've of late realized that, and it's a completely different field. So basically, these are the projectional images of the rotator cuff, and this is an anterior view, wherein you can see the subscap coming and attaching to the lesser tuberosity, the supraspinatus, the coracoacromial ligament, the AC joint, the biceps tendon, which is again here intra-articular. It just takes a turn and goes, through the bicipital groove. This is again a sagittal view, wherein you can see the acromion, supraspinatus. This is the anterior aspect. This is the posterior aspect. The subscapularis, and posteriorly you have infraspinatus and teres minor. This again is a posterior view. So basically, today we will be concentrating on sonopathology. Brief about the sonoanatomy and all were discussed by Dr. Tushar when he was taking adhesive capsulitis as such. So today, the overview of what we are going to be discussing, the pathophysiological causes is impingement, rotator cuff pathology, cuff tendinopathy, partial thickness tears, full thickness tears, biceps tendon pathology, adhesive capsulitis, acromioclavicular joint pathology, the glenohumeral joint arthritis and effusion, and calcific tendinopathy. So a few medical terminologies is quite important and quite confusing at times. So the condition in which the substance of the tendon is involved, primarily there is inflammatory response, that is in tendinitis. In tendinosis, there is a chronic tendon injury with degeneration at cellular level, and there is no inflammation. Tendinosis, that is. Tendinopathy is a chronic tendon injury. There's a spelling mistake there, sorry for that. Tendon injury with no implication to what the etiology is. So this is the impingement. Basically, this the shape of the acromion here is very vital, and this is a schematic diagram with the corresponding X-rays. So here you can see that the acromion is flat. In this case, there is acromion is curved, and this is hooked acromion. So that can have an effect on the tendon below, that is the supraspinatus. Here you can see that the acromion is flat. Here it is curved, and this is hooked. So how will that be, on a sono image? So basically, there will be thickening of the supraspinatus tendon. The bursa is here. You will not be able to make out, but there is bursitis here. The attachment at the GT is rounded up. So all these things are there. And if you take an arthroscopic image of the same, you will see that it is more erythematous, more reddish. So rotator cuff pathology. So basically how the progression happens. This is a partial thickness tear of the supraspinatus. It can progress to a full thickness tear. So with the articular and the bursal, there is a communication. Next, it can involve the whole tendon. And if it is massive tear, it can progress posteriorly into the infraspinatus, anteriorly into the biceps, long head, and the subscapularis. So these are schematic diagrams corresponding. Also, there are MRI images and sono image of how they look. This is a bursal side partial thickness tear. So in this, this is acromion. This is the bursa. This is the supraspinatus tendon, the joint space, and the cartilage, and the bone, humerus that is. So here you can actually see this is a hypoechoic area. So basically there is a fluid accumulated there, and it's a bursal side tear basically. So corresponding MRI is also there. Similarly, in this as well, you have got a bursal side tear. In an articular surface, the main thing for us to note is the cortical irregularities. Here you can see the cortical irregularities, the cortex. The intact superficial bursal fibers are there. There is again a hypoechoic area where the fluid is collected. In this as well, the superficial layer is intact, but again a little bit of articular surface cortical irregularity is also present. And here you can see a triangular area which is hypoechoic. So this is an intra-substance tear. So intra-substance partial thickness tear will be that the bursal side and the articular side, that is the cortex and all, are intact. So in fact, I do have an intervention in which we are doing PRP. That was an intra-substance tear, which we'll be seeing later on. In this case, it's a rim rent. So it looks as though it's a calcification, but it isn't. Only minimal fibers are actually, this is from the articular surface. It forms like a triangular area you can see here and looks as a calcification, but it isn't. These minimal fibers are actually involved in this. And that is also a reason why it is looking hyperechoic. Full thickness tear wherein there is a communication between your articular side and your bursal side, which you can see here. This is in a long axis. This is a short axis. So here also you can see the full thickness cylindrical shape tear. Full thickness tear with retraction. This is the distance of retraction. This is the normal tendon which is there. And again, there is accumulated fluid which is seen as a hypoechoic area. This again, there is herniation. If with the probe you are going to give a little bit of pressure also in full thickness tear, there will be herniation of the deltoid in that devoid area where there is the tear, full thickness tear. Correspondingly, you can see the MRI image as well. So very commonly presented to us, very common in females, diabetics, and that is adhesive capsulitis or frozen shoulder as we say. So this is something which is very commonly presented to our clinic. So here you can see that this is basically the rotator cuff area, and you can see the soft tissue inflamed in this area, and there is no delineation between. Ideally, there is a coracohumeral ligament, there is a superior glenohumeral ligament, the pulley, reflective pulley, and all this. Here you cannot differentiate anything. Again, this is the coracoid, and this is your normal coracohumeral ligament, whereas it is irregular and thickened in cases of adhesive capsulitis. A very important aspect of ultrasound using is we can use a dynamic examination, and that is what is helpful in this case as well. So there is incomplete abduction and external rotation also, which we'll be discussing after this slide. So you can see the supraspinatus, and this is when the abduction starts. This is normally when the abduction should end. But here you can see that the abduction is incomplete. So this is again one thing which you should notice in adhesive capsulitis. So again, restricted external rotation. In this case, you will be seeing the subscapularis. So external rotation, this is the start, and here this is how it should end. But in this case, it is restricted. So here you can see actually the biceps. So in a short axis view, how a bursa usually is seen, it's subcutaneous layer is there, deltoid. This is the bursa, supraspinatus, articular cartilage, and bone. So When there is bursitis, there is accumulation of fluid. This is how it will be. It will be thickened as well. And this was a case of synovial thickening. Again, when you get a massive SASD effusion, bursa effusion, so you need to always suspect that there will be tears associated. So you need to actually get these things ruled out, just not tapping it out and giving your anti-inflammatory in the bursa. So in biceps tendon pathology, again, this is the bicipital groove. So you see for the greater tuberosity, lesser tuberosity, and the tendinosis. This is how the picture will look like. Again, the bicipital groove, you can see that the tendon, again, all this has to be not seen only in one axis. You have to short and long, both you need to evaluate it. There is tenosynovitis again. Significantly here, the tenosynovitis is more, but there's no partial tear. Here the effusion is very clear. Tenosynovitis is very clear. This is a short and a long axis. Again, how you need to evaluate when you're doing a long axis as well. Go down till the myo tendinous junction. This is a complete long head of the biceps is completely absent here. You're not able to sometimes see assessing the biceps as such. Anisotropy can be there. It has to be very particularly seen, and you need to orient your probe accordingly and see. But still, if it's absent, then the Popeye sign, because there is downward retraction of the biceps. It's a very typical sign of complete rupture. Subluxation. So basically, the biceps tendon is held in place because of the reflective pulley, the coracohumeral ligament, all these things. And if there is any disruption, it gets dislocated. So when you are doing a dynamic examination, again for this, you will see that the biceps tendon comes outside your groove. So glenohumeral joint effusion, not as common as a knee effusion, but again you see the cortical irregularity. You see for any effusion, basically this is actually in the posterior aspect. So this is your deltoid, this is your infraspinatus. So even if you're going to do, I do have one more short clip in which we are doing hydrodilatation. So you need to come in plane. You can come from this direction and into the joint. So this basically is your glenoid. This is the labrum, joint capsule. There will be cartilage, and this is your head of the humerus. So this cortical irregularities are seen. This is a picture in a rheumatoid arthritis patient. These are the cortical irregularities, the erosions which you need to pick. Again, an AC joint pathology, quite common. I believe that surface anatomy, knowing the surface anatomy and palpating is the most important thing in shoulder. Whenever you are doing a shoulder examination, you can't just put a probe directly. You just examine the patient, irrespective of where the patient says the problem. You need to examine the patient, touch the patient, feel for the surface anatomy has to be, and this is also one of the cases wherein the AC joint tenderness, it gives you a lead into, this might be a problem. And then two things is, one, you can see the AC joint, one, and when you come laterally, the end of the acromion, and then you can also visualize or do the abduction dynamic examination as well. So you can see the bursa, and you can see the supraspinatus tendon as well. So assessment and giving a bursa injection also can be done at this level. So this is how a normal joint looks like. This is synovial thickening is there. I do have one more intervention when we are actually injecting in plane. So I'll just show you that later on. And this is how there is irregularities and osteophytes and arthritis looks like. So when there is this again is a chronic problem. If at all there is disruption and chronic tears, so there is a communication with the joint fluid comes out through this and into the AC joint, and there is a swelling which is very significantly seen. on a physical examination, you just make out, and this is called a Gayson sign. So calcific tendinitis, again, deposition of calcium hydroxyapatite. So there are different phases initially. So this is how in a longitudinal and a transverse view it looks. So pre-calcific stage, in this you don't have much of pain. The pain is less. It is more in the calcific stage. Resorptive phase is the most painful, in which the calcification is semi-liquid. And that is the time when the maximum pain the patient will be having. And in the early stages, when the pain is actually it will be less, the acoustic shadows will be there. So yeah. So I just went through this by a talk by Professor Martinoli, where he was just explaining about a few things I thought I could include before my going on to interventions, which is not a lot, but a few of them. So basically, this is the subscap. So subscapularis coming and attaching to the lesser tuberosity, but the whole tendon, the superficial layer is more fibrillar, whereas the lower isn't. So actually, this is not the tendon. This basically is your joint capsule. It's the capsular layer. And again, you should understand that it is a multipinnate. So you will find that, so picking a tear and all in a subscapularis, it should be kept in mind that it's a multipinnate structure, and these two come together and attach to the lesser tuberosity. And how do you do that? When you do an external rotation, you will see that this joint capsule comes and attaches to the glenoid. This is exactly what I was speaking about, external rotation. And this superficial layer is more fibrillar, whereas the layer below, this is misinterpreted that this is actually the part of the tendon, but it isn't. It is actually the joint capsule. It comes and attaches to the glenoid. So this basically is an illustrative diagram in which the supraspinatus, and you can see that there is a overlap. And the reason why we don't get fibrillar pattern mainly in our supraspinatus is because of these orientation of the fibers. So only the anterior 1/3, which is you'll have the fibrillar pattern and can be confused with the biceps. So this area can also be called as a pseudo biceps area. So we need to be careful when we are actually doing our examination. So supraspinatus, infraspinatus, the complex. So here a brief discussion. This is the coracohumeral ligament, comes down, and a little proximal to the attachment, there is a rotator cable. The rotator cable with the capsule and the deep posterior supraspinatus together form the superior complex. And there is this reflective pulley, and this is the superior glenohumeral ligament, which will be present in this place. So this basically is your supraspinatus, infra, and this is your superior complex in the short axis. Again, this is the same what we discussed there. You can see that this is a myotendinous junction between the subscapularis muscle and the tendon. The fibrillar pattern, which you can observe here on the top superficial layer, and the one below. This actually is the joint capsule. This is not the part of the tendon which goes and attaches down to the. So again, this is also the area where you can give your joint injection. So coming to the AC joint injection, again a very superficial joint. So this plate. Yeah. So basically, for the orientation of the probe is like this, and the needle, it's a very superficial joint. So first you need to palpate and see where the joint is, and then the probe is placed, get the picture in the middle, the joint in the middle, and then the needle in plane needling is Quite simple in this. The only thing is the area where you're going to deposit, it shouldn't be too deep. Just enter the capsule and you can deposit your injection. A PRP can be done. Pain is severe, anti-inflammatory medicine, triamcinolone can be injected. This is again, as I told you, an intrasubstance tear. So a PRP. I'll be showing you the ergonomics, and this is an again in plane needling. It always is better. The needle is visualized better. Go slow. Again, injecting too much into the tendon is not the point. Locate the area where it is, deposit, come out. If it is in bursal side tear, you can also deposit within the bursa, this case. And some dry needling can be done. Dry needling can also be done. So this is again a suprascapular nerve block. So this is the fossa, and you can see the notch which is here. This is the anterior, this is the posterior aspect. So when we are actually doing the ultrasound examination, when we hold it like this, we may not be able to see that notch. So it is like you need to tilt it. You need to tilt it a little anteriorly, wherein the notch will be easy to visualize. The needle will not be very clear. It will not be just like how we saw in a supraspinatus. The track will be, the reason for that is you cannot do a parallel needle. You need to go a little. So, you get into, you just cross the superior scapulary transverse ligament. There's an artery up, avoid the artery, which is present here. Get into the notch. You can do, you can inject with steroid, local anesthesia with steroid. If you're doing a PRP in this area, you can use prolotherapy, 5%. You can use 5 to 6 ml. And one more thing is the supraspinatus basically is suprascapular nerve passes from this notch and it goes through this splenoglenoid. So this whole area you can deposit anywhere. You don't need to actually get into the notch, pierce and give. So even pulse tariff neuromodulation can also be done at this area. So here you can see that the needle is, at the notch, you can see the needle move. As I told you, it will not be very clear, but you can see the local anesthetic distending the area. Aspirate again, and you can deposit at this area. So this is again, the reason I have kept this is the PRP for the supraspinatus, and the ergonomics is very, very important. Your machine, your patient, and you. So this is very important. You can't turn back and see. So the alignment, it's very, very important. The height at which you keep, the positioning. This is all for supraspinatus, for it to come out actually from beneath the acromion. This position, modified cross, is very important. You can get the patient to the end and clean and drape the area, and you go slow at this because supraspinatus, again, once your block has worked, it will not be that painful, but you need to always go slow. This is the in plane needling. Nowadays, what I also do is the joint, you can actually, this is the posterior aspect. So your probe is here. So sometimes in obese patients, it becomes difficult to manipulate and put the needle in the joint, or it has to travel a long distance. So in that case, you can actually see the area correctly, see where your labrum is, and go out of plane also. So out of plane, of course, it requires a little expertise because only the tip of the needle will be seen. So in fact, hydrodilatation, as I told you, that adhesive capsulitis patients are very common at our center. So in plane and out of plane needling can be done. Rotator cuff interval also, you can inject at that place where the biceps, the humeral ligament and the pulley and that area, because biceps again is an intra-articular long head of the biceps, I'm telling. It's got an intra-articular course. So that can be deposited. But in this case, when you are depositing in the joint, you can deposit more. So what we do is we inject local anesthetic with a little bit of anti-inflammatory and 20 to 30 ml of NS, normal saline, after we have given the block. And slow manipulation can be done, followed with aggressive physiotherapy for, and usually rotator cuffs are involved. That can be addressed later on, but the patient does get good relief. You don't need to push in too much, but till a limit where you can manipulate the patient, you can do it slowly. Here you can see the distension. You can see the distension of the joint capsule. The joint is getting distended in this case. These are my references. Thank you for listening.